Hi, everyone. This is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. It's one of those very special episodes. I have been going all out on planning our Device Talks West meeting, which is happening on October 19th and 20th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. It's going to be a great event featuring speakers from many major med techs, including Abbott, BD, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Penumbra, Shockwave, and others who are still to be announced. So please do join us on October 19th and 20th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. The early bird pricing is expiring on August 20th. I'll be posting an agenda of August 16th. We'll have that up there for your review, but I promise you it's going to be a great day. We had a great time in Boston. We're going to double the fun in Santa Clara, so make sure you are part of it. Today's guest is actually a guest from a Medtronic Talks podcast. In fact, I'm going to play the whole podcast for you. I spoke with Greg Smith, who's Executive Vice President of Global Operations and Supply Chain at Medtronic. Supply chain is obviously a huge issue, and Greg was very helpful in helping me understand how Medtronic is dealing with this problem. And I'll have lots to talk about with you. I'll be on vacation next week, and next Friday I'm actually going to share an interview that I did with Dr. Laura Mowry, who is Senior Vice President and Chief Scientific, Medical, and Regulatory Officer at Medtronic. So we'll have back-to-back Medtronic Talks on the Device Talks podcast weekly channel. But two great interviews with two senior leaders at a great medtech company. So I know you'll enjoy that conversation as well. That's going to come out, if you want a sneak peek, on our Medtronic Talks channel on Wednesday. But if you have not subscribed yet to Medtronic Talks, you'll get it on Friday at this Device Talks channel, and you'll find out what you're missing. So you should subscribe to Medtronic Talks. So that's it, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. And we'll have a regular Device Talks Weekly podcast episode for you in 2 weeks. Hi, everyone. This is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome to our second season of Medtronic Talks. In our first season, we spoke with the leaders of Medtronic's operating units to better understand the direction of each of the businesses. Now, with their courses set and clear, we're going to talk to the engineers, scientists, physicians, and other experts who are executing on these strategies. We'll still keep a tight focus on each of Medtronic's businesses, but we are going to get a lot deeper into these stories. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Tom Salemi here of Device Talks. Welcome back to the Medtronic Talks podcast. We get to talk supply chain today. A couple of years ago, we didn't even know what a supply chain was. Today, everyone has questions, opinions, and is feeling the impact of the global pressures on supply chain. Greg Smith, Executive Vice President of Global Operations and Supply Chain at Medtronic, is no exception. In fact, he's been working hard since arriving at Medtronic to ensure they have the materials they need to keep their inventories at the levels that their customers require. So Greg came to Medtronic from outside of medtech, but he brought in a lot of understanding of the supply chain process. We'll talk about how Medtronic is managing things, about what it means for its suppliers, about how it's going forward, again, to ensure it has the inventory and the materials it needs to supply its customers. So great conversation with Greg. He was very forthcoming, very helpful, very friendly. And I'm grateful for the time he took. Before we get into this conversation, I'd first like to ask you to subscribe to the Medtronic Talks podcast on its podcast channel. We have channels on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. You can find the podcast anywhere you can find a podcast. And if you subscribe or follow, all future episodes will be sent directly to your listening device. So don't miss a future episode. And finally, before we begin this interview with Greg Smith, I would like to bring in our sponsor, Donatel. I'm speaking with Donatel President Teresa Springett. Teresa, please tell us about Donatel.
Donatel was founded as a tool and die company in 1967, and today we provide medical components and devices worldwide. We operate under an ISO 9001 and 13485 certified systems and are FDA registered as a contract manufacturer. We offer product development, rapid prototyping, 3D printing, tool making, and a variety of molding options which include micro, insert, liquid silicone, bioresorbable, micro metal injection, clean room, as well as automated high-volume molding solutions. We also offer precision machining of metals and plastics, component and device assembly, process validation, sterilization, and supply chain management. So whether the need is to lower supply chain risk, make sourcing easier, or manage bottom line more efficiently, partnering with Donatel brings our customers a competitive edge.
Thanks for that introduction, Teresa. We'll hear more from Teresa and Donatel a little later in the podcast. If you'd like to find out more, please go to their website, donatelmedical.com. That's DONATELLE medical.com. Well, Greg Smith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to talk to you. And of course, supply chain is something we're all experts in now. We've all have our theories on what needs to happen for things to sort out. So I'm hoping you'll add to that collective intelligence with this interview. But I'd like to talk first about your background a bit. You've been in supply chain your entire career. Review your career a bit, and then let's learn how you found your way over to Medtronic.
Sure, Tom. I've been in operations and supply chain for 36 years now. Started off and spent the first 20 years in the consumer products group industry, and then made a move from that industry over to automotive with Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, and then left Goodyear and went to Walmart and was in the retail industry up until about a little over a year ago when I joined Medtronic. So happy to be on the med tech side. And, like you said, it's a great time to be in supply chain.
I'm sure you're invited to every cocktail party and barbecue because people want to know what's going on. I'm curious. You mentioned tires and consumer and now medtech. Is supply chain, or does each industry provide its own challenges?
I think it's both. I would tell you that the fundamentals are there. At the end of the day, it really comes down to right product, right place, right time. Hopefully every time. I think the better you service your customer, the better you get the repeat on the business and build your brand, and that's what everybody seeks to do. There are nuances clearly, regulated industries, non-regulated industries, just different ways of going to market, different points of distribution, different nodes, different customer base. So I'd say every industry is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, the fundamentals are there. You care greatly about your people, and you want to make sure that they're working in a safe environment. You hold quality to the highest degree. Working on servicing the customer and doing it in a very effective and a very efficient way.
So let's talk about the state of the broader supply chain. Let's ask the question that everyone asks you at every barbecue and party. What's going on? What's the state of the supply chain? We've got a lot going on that we're clearing, we hope, through the pandemic. Obviously, we've got the ongoing war at Ukraine and who knows what's next. So where are the weak spots in the supply chain? What's creating all the anxiety?
Well, I would say current, Tom, and you hit it right. It's been a 2-year journey, quite frankly, since things started with COVID, when you really look at everything. But I'd say now we're dealing with a compounded impact, of a number of factors. You've got material shortages that candidly go all the way back to 2 years ago with the deep freezes in Texas, of where you actually had the force majeures around plastics and around resins, and things that in some cases hit the industry immediately. And in other cases, it took a long time to actually work its way through. To disrupt safety stocks and to put, converters in very challenging positions. Second of all has been logistics. I mean, global logistics has been a real challenge. You've seen rates spike dramatically. You've seen capacity challenges. You've seen disorientation of containers on one side of the world versus the other. Third area is around labor. Labor has been a real challenge. COVID's played a role in that. But when you look at primary labor impact to us as the manufacturers, but also to our second tier, our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, and their ability to be able to attract and maintain labor, been a challenge. COVID, the disruptions of markets being up and down, open, close, disrupting manufacturing, impacting distribution. And then lastly, as you mentioned, the war. You look at sourcing locations, things that come from that region, distribution, sanctions, all kinds of issues. It's been a compounding impact, I think, of all these areas. There are signs on the horizon of certain things getting better, but I think it's still going to be a ways before we work certain issues out. Semiconductors, which has been a real challenge these last year and a half. There's not a clear picture as you go forward. about the implications of semiconductors. A lot of work underway to bring more capacity to market, but also a lot of consumption, a lot of demand, against that scarce commodity. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done, and I think it's going to linger with us for a while.
Let's talk specifically about medtech and some of the issues you mentioned. Semiconductors, let's start there. How exposed is the medtech industry compared to other industries? The auto industry, I don't know how many semiconductors they have in cars nowadays, but they do everything, I was going to say except for drive, but they're doing that too. How important are semiconductors to medical devices? I know we're getting more technical and including more functions within medical device systems. Or are we as exposed as other industries are to the semiconductor shortage?
Well, I would say we're adequately exposed. There's no question about that. I think others may have more dependency as they expand their offerings, if you will. A lot of our products use semiconductors and printed circuit boards. Others don't. Mm-hmm. But in the area that we are, I mean, we're a very small percentage of the semiconductor demand that exists out there. But when you think about what we do, the implications every day for us is serving 72 million patients a year. Making sure that, health and wellness, comes down to our mission, if you will, is very critical to us. So, I can't speak to the other industries, but I know they are as well there, especially as we move to become more digitized, as we start to do more autonomously. There is going to robotics, industry 4.0. There's more and more demand on the horizon, for technology, which includes semiconductors and printed circuit boards. So it's a challenge for us. And I think it will be something that we'll continue to use more of than less.
And how has that shortage impacted things at Medtronic? I've heard of car companies shipping out cars that don't have all the functionality that they're capable of, with the idea that they can add the semiconductor chips later. I don't think you have that option in medical devices. What's the impact been on production for semiconductor-wise for Medtronic?
I mean, it's been disruptive.
And we're back with Teresa Springett, president of Donatel. Teresa, how does Donatel work with medical device companies?
Donatel is 100% dedicated to the medical industry. We have a solid history of success, with engineering, tool building, and design for manufacturing being the cornerstone in our development process. Whether we're working on a single component or complete device, we leverage the expertise of our technical team members across the organization, from manufacturing and tool making. We work very closely with our customers to optimize their product designs. Through consistent growth and diversification, Donatel offers all the capabilities our customers need at one location and under one roof. Our proven performance track record and robust quality management system, along with our solid financial position and ongoing improvement initiatives, provide the basis for why Donatel is the best choice and lowest risk supply chain partner.
That's great. And I understand Donatel, like everybody else, faced some challenges over the last couple of years. How did things go?
The pandemic magnified the challenges to find skilled workers across all sectors of MedTech. In addition, there are shortages of certain medical grade resins and packaging used to make medical plastic products and accessories. Both has increased lead times. Donatel is focused on the bottlenecks that have surfaced and allocated enough time to address surprises or switch gears when necessary. Disruptions can come up quickly and unexpectedly. Being better prepared and more collaborative with our suppliers and OEMs has been key to mutual success.
That's great, Teresa. And finally, I understand Donatel has been busy innovating. You've rolled out some great new resources and products. Can you tell us about them?
Some of the newer technologies developed at Donatel over the past couple of years include the addition of micro metal injection molding, bioresorbable injection molding, continuing to enhance and upgrade our micro manufacturing and metrology capabilities and platforms allows us to further miniaturize the components for the medical industries we serve. Donatel launched patented connector systems for use within our customers' implantable pulse generating devices. Those systems are used in both cardiac and neuromodulation markets and have the reference trade names of SmartStack and NeuroStack. These were developed to meet an unmet need within our customers and devices. Donatel is currently in the process of a significant expansion for cleanroom assembly and putting in place additional capital and people resources. We are also in the planning phase of expanding our cleanroom molding capabilities. Additionally, Donatel added significant automation and resources to support high-volume production for both molding and medical device assembly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Teresa, for joining us on the Medtronic Talks podcast. Once again, if you'd like to find out more information about Donatel, go to donatelmedical.com. That's DONATELLE medical.com. What's the impact been on production for semiconductor-wise for Medtronic?
I mean, it's been disruptive. It has clearly been disruptive. And, in some cases, we've had consistent supply. In others, we've had to go to alternatives for supply. And in some cases, quite frankly, you have to modify your technology to be able to adapt to something that is more commonly available. But it is definitely, it's driven constraints and it's driven disruptions. That's, but to your point, no, we can't really, exclude a chip and reduce a function of the products that we produce.
And how about you mentioned the resin shortage, which was something I wasn't entirely aware of. And you mentioned the term force majeure, which I think is the first time it's been used on any podcast I've been part of. So thank you for bringing that into our podcast lexicon. I'll have to work that into my questions later on. So what happened there in Texas? I mean, we all know about the deep freeze, but wasn't aware of this impact on the supply chain from that hellish month.
Yeah, it's interesting now because it's hard to believe that we're still talking about it 2 years later.
Right.
But, the deep freeze in Texas really took out a lot of capacity in the plastics and resins and petrochemical business. And if you recall, I think we saw in somewhere around as an industry about 85 force majeures that played out during that period of time. So those factories were required to come back online. Some of them didn't come back online very quickly. It took delayed startups to be able to get them underway. And it had a huge implication throughout the supply chain. When you look at a lot of packaging materials, there are multiple converters in place. And when you looked at the implications of that event and those force majeures, it took things a long time to get back up and running. And so we're still feeling some elements of that today, which is, again, hard to believe that we're talking about it 2 years later, but that's the magnitude of the impact to the overall supply chain.
Was it the cold damaging equipment? Was it loss of labor? What is keeping those plants from getting up to where they were before?
Yeah, the issue initially was the impact on the capacity related to mechanical breakdowns or issues of where deep freeze pumps, piping, all kinds of things associated with a deep freeze. That was the initial issue. I think they've probably suffered with everything else that I described earlier within supply chain and the challenges we all have since then. But the initial issue that was the jolt to the system was related to the deep freeze that occurred that February 2 years ago.
And you had a unique situation lately that was reported on in your annual call or your analyst call with a particular facility that had a fire. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, I would just tell you, in some cases when you have suppliers that actually have, a large percentage of the capacity in an industry or a product that you use, we had a facility that we used downstream that actually had a steam explosion that actually rendered their facility offline for some period of time. Mm-hmm. And so that was a hiccup that impacted not just us, but a number of our competitors as well that use the product lines that they produce.
So what are the strategies that or the initiatives that you're taking at Medtronic to stabilize your supply chain?
Well, I would say we're kind of bifurcated in what we're working on, Tom. First of all, work is to stabilize and make sure that we get to a position that we're back to more normal operations and get through these supply chain disruptions. The second is really for us transforming the organization and the supply chain to make sure that our supply chain and operations is a competitive advantage for the company. We see the opportunity within our supply chain to be able to build and enhance capabilities that really allow us to be able to do, really kind of four things, I would say. First of all, is to ensure that we really enable customer and patient service and market growth. I mean, that goes back to the fundamentals of what I described earlier of the right product, right place, right time, every time. Second of all is, we are the stewards of a significant amount of asset base. I mean, we got 70 facilities globally and 66 distribution centers and about 45,000 associates. And, it's critical that in those factories and those operations, we drive operational excellence and we are ensuring that we're engaging our people to improve and drive problem solving every day. cost optimization for us is a big focus, is eliminating loss and taking out rework in the system, because in our industry, when we make investments in innovation or other business product lines, are really good things happen, and we can expand our mission and we can actually service a lot more people. And then lastly is really around ensuring that we are the employer of choice and we create an inspired employee experience. What I would tell you in the short term, what we're really focusing on doing is making sure that we are really doubling down, if you will, around planning and making sure that all of our partners upstream and downstream, that we have much better planning in place, or much more timely planning, if you will, because things are so fluid and they're so dynamic, whether it's with a tier 1 or a tier 3 or a tier 5 supplier, to have transparency and to be able to anticipate what's coming and to be able to impact it as early in the process as we can. Second area for us is around our supply base. We have embedded a lot of our resources in a number of our suppliers that, quite frankly, are the ones that are most sensitive to meeting our needs. And so we have deployed teams out to those locations to make sure that we're working through all aspects of the supply chain, from material planning to capacity planning to deployment of the products out into our network. And then we are obviously, ensuring too, from our manufacturing facilities, that we continue to maintain the safest possible environment with COVID, because it's not gone yet, but to make sure that we're operating our facilities as efficiently as we can to be able to rebuild and get back to historical levels of performance.
You mentioned deploying teams. Are you doing that with all of your suppliers, or with tier 1s or tier 2s? And are they sent all over the globe, and that sounds like a lot of work. How many teams are you sending out?
It is a lot of work. I mean, we've got about 20 teams right now that we've deployed to some of our most important and most sensitive suppliers, ones that are absolutely critical, that maybe have some kind of challenge in their supply chain, just to make sure that we are basically integrating. The importance of supply chains is, the value stream is so important. And if one thing doesn't happen well across the overall value stream, then you fail. And so it's specific care. It's making sure that we have the focus of our resources with those suppliers to make sure we're planning together and we are setting ourselves up for the best opportunity for success. So for us, it's 20 different locations that we have today. We don't anticipate this being a long term, but until we get more stability around the overall supply chain, it's really helped enhance our visibility, our decision making, and our ability to drive better outcomes.
And are you adding suppliers? Does having more suppliers provide security, or are you being more selective in your suppliers and just keeping a sort of a gold star list?
Yeah, I would say, Tom, that our focus is to make sure that we have the right suppliers. It's to make sure that we have the right strategic suppliers. And to me, strategic supplier means someone that can meet our quality needs, can meet the service that we require, are cost competitive and drive continuous improvement. And then ultimately ones that we can partner with on innovation and to be able to help bring new ideas to us that we can work with to be able to even provide better, products out into the market. So for us, that's a big focus for us as we transform our supply chain, is to make sure that we are doubling down on ensuring that we have the right supply base and that we are making those decisions very strategically as we move forward.
I just want to make sure I understand. Doubling down means what? It means you're adding more people, or you're giving more scrutiny on the ones you have?
Much more scrutiny on the choices that we make around supply base. I mean, it's to evaluate the suppliers we have, and as we look to our future, to make sure that we are putting forth the diligence of ensuring that the folks that we partner with are the ones that are most strategically aligned. We're important to them, they're important to us, and they can meet those parameters that we described.
How much turnover have you had in your suppliers, and how are you vetting new suppliers? I guess I'm trying to understand, did this force you to look through your list and say, okay, we're going to focus on these and these aren't going to be an emphasis for us? What does that look like? And again, how are you vetting new suppliers, assuming you're looking for new partners to work with?
Yeah, I would say as we go forward, it's vetting of the suppliers with the right cross-functional resources to make sure that they've got the quality requirements that we need, that they're able to service our business, that they are cost competitive, and that they have great innovation and are people that we can grow with. I mean, that's our intent, is to make sure that we're partnering with the right players. So we will go through as part of our strategic work, and we will be very focused on making sure that in some cases we add new suppliers where maybe we have gaps or we have issues, or it may be that we replace suppliers that we have today where we are not satisfied with the performance that we're getting.
And if you look out, you grab your virtual binoculars and look out into the field of suppliers out there, are you seeing a lot of opportunities to a lot of potential partners, or are you seeing sort of a kind of a smoldering landscape where people are just still struggling to kind of get things back together? And that's my term, not your term, but I'm just kind of wondering, what does the field of potential partners look like?
No, I mean, we're encouraged by the potential partners that exist out there. I don't think that's going to be a limitation. Mm-hmm. It's going to be making sure that we connect with the right ones. I mean, there are a lot of suppliers that have weathered this storm incredibly well. There have been others that have been impacted significantly. And so, we want to make sure that we have the right partners that can weather the storms, and to make sure that, we're thinking ahead of storms and ensuring that we have the right proactive relationships, but, meeting those tenets that I described already.
Without giving names, I'm curious, are there any helpful innovations being offered by suppliers? Anyone coming at this at a new approach that's really caught your eye and you kind of want to hold up as a model for others?
I think, I'm not going to call out anybody specifically, but I'd tell you, in every industry that I've ever worked, there are those innovators. Yeah. They're the ones that are out there that are actually driving, that see the opportunity, just like we do, to provide better services and better needs against our patients, which has more pull. And I think that we see the same thing in our industry as well from the suppliers. There are some very good suppliers out there that, are the kind of suppliers that we want to partner with.
Looking into your background a bit again, you came from consumer, you were in tires before that, you've been in various industries, and we kind of talked about the similarities and differences up at the top, but have there been strategies from previous industries that you brought to Medtronic that have helped you in medtech? And are there some that just simply don't work in medtech?
I would say that there's probably very little that I would exclude from medtech. I think medtech as the basic of operation, the supply chain, is very common in a lot of ways with the other industries. The part that I would say that is so important for us, and is one of the key things that we wanted to do at Medtronic, is we want to continue to drive up the service levels to our patients and to our customers. And when you think about, some of the other industries that exist out there, they have really excelled at ensuring that the patient, or in that case, the customer, is serviced at a very high degree and a very high level. And I would tell you that we have a significant focus on making sure that our on time in full requirements go up, and our ability to be able to service that. We have a big focus on ensuring that we are continually enhancing and driving, the quality of our products to make sure that, they are the top tier that they can possibly be. And we want to continue to drive waste and loss out. That's one thing I would say in the med tech industry that you see. There's a lot of inventory, a lot of complexity, but also a lot of inventory. So I think there's the opportunity, and certainly a focus for us, to be much better at our integrated business planning, so that we've got more accurate signals of demand, and then we can run the supply requirements across our network to make sure that we are able to service at a high level while reducing working capital and reducing inventory levels. You'll see in our industry, Tom, that our levels of inventory are somewhat high. And others do much more complex business with a lot less inventory. But it comes down to them mastering and being in a position to be much better in understanding of what the customer needs when they're going to need it, and to be able to connect all their planning and their execution systems to be able to deliver against that. Those are big opportunities that we see ahead for Medtronic.
I mean, I guess that was demonstrated in the pandemic, and you weren't with Medtronic at the time, but with the issues with defibrillators and the need for those products, whereas contrast that with the need for toilet paper, which is critical, but not necessarily life-saving.
No.
So going forward, do you see Medtronic having larger inventories of products to ensure that, God forbid, we face another crisis, that you're able to respond?
I think risk management plays a key role in our business, right? We've got to figure out mitigating strategies, which aren't always about more inventory. Sometimes it's able to be more agile. It's sometimes to have multiple sources. There's a lot of different things that we can do to mitigate that. But I don't necessarily believe that inventory is the appropriate approach. I think that, other industries, and I'll use retail as a great example, retail and the CPG industries have significantly improved their ability to service their customers by bringing inventory levels down. They've done that, again, by being much more accurate in what they do. And so there is a quest in those companies, and we're having that. We have that quest in Medtronic as well, to make sure that through integrated business planning, we are better understanding where that demand is going to be, and then how we best supply it. And we do it by minimizing rework and minimizing loss.
Looking forward, does your list of suppliers 2 years from now, is it as long as the one you have today? Is it shorter? Is it longer?
I would anticipate it's shorter.
Shorter. And that's going to be the result of this process you're going through.
Yeah, we want to partner with the right supply base. Yep. And, I think that, we have the opportunity to align with strategic suppliers that'll probably be less than what we have today.
And looking forward again, are we ever going to reach a point where no one ever needs to talk to you again at a cocktail party about where supply chain is? Are supply chain going to move back into the background and be something that we don't have to worry about? Or is this, and we all hate the term, is this the new normal for supply chain?
Well, I hope the issues associated with supply chain are not the new normal. And I don't believe that they will be. I think we'll discover new ways to adjust the supply chain and be able to adapt to some degree. So some of the things that we've learned recently. But I think what this shows is it shows the importance of supply chain. It shows the importance of operations. And I think a lot of companies and a lot of industries have understood that for a long time. I think other industries are learning that today. And it's kind of interesting when you look around and you see the different organizations, even that we deal with here, the prominence of supply chain is increasing because it is so important to make sure that you have the products in the right place. And whether you're a hospital or you're a manufacturer or you're a supplier, whatever that might be, if you don't have the materials that you need to do the job, you've got a big problem. So just the fundamentals of what supply chains do, I think to some degree, some of them are very efficient and you don't have to think about them. But we've certainly seen the challenges when they don't work well and the impact that's had, on industries and, quite frankly, on the world. So I don't think the prominence of supply chain will ever be reduced. It's certainly better understood, and we'll recreate it based on our learnings of the last couple of years, and we'll ensure that, that we reset as we go forward. But I think you'll see the prominence for years to come.
Great. And last question, looking forward, what is the number one and number two challenge that really has you, to use the cliche, up at night? Is it labor? Is it something else? Another unforeseen catastrophe?
I would say the number one thing for me that has me up at night is just getting everything reset. I mean, being in a position where everything settles down to these 5 issues that I've talked about earlier and really getting ourselves back to kind of a new normal. That's probably the biggest thing. It's been a challenging couple of years. It's been the hardest in my 35 years or 36 years of doing this. But I'll tell you, I give a significant amount of credit to the associates and employees of Medtronic and just the grit and the determination and the work that they've done to really get us through this period of time. I mean, people are working incredibly hard, in some degree, not as great outcomes as what we'd like. And so, I'm anxious to get to those days where, we get back to stability, we can build off the foundation that we have and actually transform the organization to be a best-in-class competitor and a competitive advantage for Medtronic.
Well, great. This has been a very interesting conversation. I hope we can talk again in a year or so and see how things have come along.
I look forward to it.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, well, that is a wrap. Thanks so much to Greg Smith for the time he took to explain where Medtronic is headed. Thanks, of course, to Donatel for sponsoring this episode of the Medtronic Talks podcast. And thanks, of course, to you for listening. Once again, don't forget to subscribe. Also, please share this podcast episode on your social media channels. And when you do, connect with me. I am on Twitter at MedTechTom. I am on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi at Device Talks. And I've restarted my Instagram account at MedTechTom. If you want to see what my dog looks like, it's a great way to connect. So thanks again for listening to this episode of the Medtronic Talks podcast. Tune in next time. We'll have another great story from Medtronic waiting for you.